Hello and welcome to our AmeriCorps VISTA member webinar titled Understanding and Using Non-Competitive Eligibility. My name is Chris Hawks. I'm a training specialist for AmeriCorps VISTA and Return Peace Corps volunteer. I'm joined by my colleague Eric Powell, an AmeriCorps alum and training specialist at AmeriCorps VISTA, and we'll be your host for today's webinar. Also joining us, we have the pleasure of having Kaki Burke, a member support specialist with the VISTA Member Support Unit. Kaki spent several years in Colombia teaching English before joining the Peace Corps in Ecuador. She has been working with AmeriCorps VISTA since 2021 and is happy to continue working in the service sector. Now, both Kaki and Eric have experience with using NCE or non-competitive eligibility, and will share their experiences with the process. First, let's just kind of look at the agenda. So today, we're here to talk about the benefit non-competitive eligibility. We'll refer to it as NCE because we love our acronyms, and it's just a lot easier to say. Non-competitive eligibility is a mouthful. The NCE, it's a special benefit that VISTA members have access to after service. So looking at our agenda today, we'll define and clarify the NCE benefit. We'll explore how you can take advantage of your NCE status and consider ways you can highlight your VISTA service and NCE eligibility when applying for a federal job. As a quick reminder, because the question does come up pretty frequently, and I'll probably say it again later on, but we are recording this webinar and we'll post the recording and handouts to the VISTA campus shortly, likely by tomorrow. Once we do that, I'll send out an email once it's posted to the campus in case you need to review any items. So let's get started, and to do so, I will pass it to Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so glad you kicked off the webinar well. And I think a great way to start is answering the question, what exactly is non-competitive eligibility, or NCE? Well, we should probably first get a quick grasp of what you already know. So we're going to ask you to answer this question in the chat panel. What do you already know, or what have you already heard about this NCE benefit? Now, you may have a brief response, or maybe you have a couple of sentences based on the information that you share. We'll give you a moment to share your responses in the chat to the question, what do you know, or what have you heard about NCE? And I'm seeing a lot of responses coming, so I'm glad, Chris, we have an extremely knowledgeable group. It's always great to be among VISTA members. I'm seeing several people saying it's valid for 1 year. I've heard that it allows potential for getting a federal job. Few more people saying they think it lasts a year. You may be able to get treated like an internal federal employee upon hiring. It helps assist you with the application process, provides more opportunity for federal jobs. A couple more I see. Some people are saying that they are aware or they've heard that it's not a guarantee, but that it's a good opportunity to potentially have a better chance of getting a federal job. And I've seen several comments around people saying one way you can utilize it is going to USAJobs, which I know we're going to be talking about a little bit later. So this is great that we already know you know a lot. We are going to cover a few of those in detail just to make sure everyone is on the same page. But I do want to mention that this information is really helpful for us to know and for you to know. And with this information, we can emphasize a few items as we dive into more details during the webinar. So thank you for that activity. So I will highlight some things that have already been said in the chat just to make sure we're all aware. Non-competitive eligibility is a hiring status. It permits federal agencies to hire former AmeriCorps VISTA and Peace Corps members who meet the minimum qualifications to apply for federal jobs without having to go through the full competitive selection process. So what exactly does this mean? That's a lot of words, a lot of garble. So let's say that you're among about 100 people applying for the same position. These applications often, or almost always, go through a screening process where all of the applications are screened prior to the hiring manager receiving them. And then, out of that 100 applicants, only a certain amount, let's say 20% or 20, of the most qualified applicants are then sent to the hiring manager for review. But with NCE, as long as you meet the minimum qualifications, your application would be among those sent to the hiring manager for review. So let's break it down just a little bit further. I'm going to highlight how the federal government is set up, which will hopefully help unpack a little bit more about how NCE works in the federal government. So to start, the federal government consists of three types of services: the competitive service, the accepted service, and the senior executive service. We're not going to go into all of the details and intricacies of each, because all the details are not relevant for this webinar, but we do want to highlight a few important points. Most jobs in the federal government are considered part of the competitive service, which is governed by the civil service laws established by Congress and regulations established by the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM. There's a similar number of federal government jobs that are not part of the competitive service, and they are accepted from many civil service laws and regulations. And these jobs are part of the accepted service. The Peace Corps is an accepted service agency, as well as several other national agencies such as National Security Agency, the CIA, and the FBI. And the third is what's called the Senior Executive Service, or SES. And that's much less common, so we're not going to go into detail about this type. But I will say that most civilians in the federal government of the US are part of the competitive service. Non-competitive eligibility means that a federal agency can hire you outside of the usual competitive examining process. First, we want to highlight that NCE status does not mean that a VISTA is guaranteed or entitled to a federal position. However, it does permit, and we do want to emphasize, it doesn't require but permits a federal agency to hire a VISTA alum who meets the minimum qualifications for a position without going through a formal review process. That means that you could be appointed to federal positions that may or may not be available to the general public, which is a huge benefit. For example, some jobs posted from employers of national service are specifically and only aimed at those people who have NCE status. So that gives you the chance to apply for some positions that are not open to the general public. In addition, your application may be processed faster than others because, as we said again, and we emphasize it several times because it's so important to know this, as long as you meet the minimum qualifications, your application goes quickly through the screening process. That being said, this is the federal government that we're talking about, so we definitely recommend still planning on a lengthy process, which we'll go into in just a bit. And Chris, I'll pass it to you to talk about some considerations.
Thanks, Eric. Now, there are a few important considerations to keep in mind when it comes to NCE status. First, this is a federal hiring status, and it only applies to federal positions. I saw a few mention that in the chat earlier, where it doesn't apply to state or local government. That is correct. Jobs in state governments or in the private sector do not recognize the non-competitive status. Second, the NCE benefit has a limited duration or time period to use. This status is granted to VISTA members upon successful completion of their VISTA service and is valid for 1 year after your last day of service. Finally, you have a role to play in advocating for your NCE status. Hiring managers will not automatically know that you qualify for this status, so you will need to communicate your eligibility throughout the hiring process. And we'll discuss what that means and how to do this later in the presentation. Now, the reason why you will need to communicate your NCE status is because there is no one entity that manages individuals with NCE status or administers the benefit. This is a really important thing to keep in mind as you think about the benefit, as you think about NCE status. What I mean is there's no NCE office, there's no NCE agency that has a database with a list of NCE recipients. I wish there was, I truly do, but there's not. So a hiring manager will not necessarily automatically be alerted to the fact that you are a VISTA alum and have this NCE status. And not all hiring managers are familiar with NCE status. So there are times where they may not know that it exists or what it is. Our goal is to change that, where we are trying to make sure all agencies, all hiring managers throughout the federal government are aware of this NCE status. And we have seen progress and will continue to advocate across agencies, both for the NCE benefit and just because VISTA alums make great job candidates in general based on the work you do through the challenging situations you face on a day-to-day basis. It is your responsibility to know the ins and outs of this benefit, and it's important to advocate on behalf of yourself for its use. When I wrapped up my Peace Corps service, I received NCE status after my Peace Corps service, but I kind of failed to understand these 3 points, these 3 bullets on the screen. I did kind of assume that that I would be, registered or tagged as having NCE, and that simply was not the case. So we're going to talk about what this all means, and we'll offer some strategies. But before going into those details, we first want to recap and review some of just the details we've discussed so far. So what we want to do on the screen, you will see a poll pop up that asks you to answer the following 3 questions. So we have, when does your NCE status start? Does NCE status guarantee a federal job? And how long do you have NCE status? I think many of you are going to get these correct. So you may have to scroll down to answer all 3 and then hit submit. We'll give it about 30 seconds. I don't even know if we need 30 seconds. There's already many responding, but give it another 10 seconds or so. It looks like there's still some responses coming in. Okay. Still trickling in. I like it. Good response rates. Give a little drum roll. If you're almost done, make sure you hit submit. Okay, let's take a look at the answers. So first off, when does your NCE status start? It starts as soon as you complete service. So 97% of you got that correct. Great job. That was B. So it starts as soon as you complete your year of service. To be eligible, you must successfully complete your full year and 365 days of service. This often prompts a question of when to apply if you're looking for a position directly after service. And we will talk about that. We'll touch on that in just a bit. That is a common question that comes up, and we'll talk on it. Second question here, does NCE status guarantee a federal job? Answer here is no. And again, almost all of you got this correct. Great job. It does not guarantee a job, but it does give you an advantage and leg up in the hiring process if you meet the minimum qualifications for the position. And then the third one, how long do you have NCE status? It is 1 year. And again, vast majority of you got that correct. Great job. You have it for 1 year. We often get some questions about this 1 year limit as well. And that's fine. That ties into our next question for you. And I'll pass it to Eric for that.
Thanks, Chris. So the next question is, it's really a scenario. So Jake served for 2 consecutive years as a VISTA member, and he's wrapping up his 2nd year in June of 2024. Since he served for 2 consecutive years, how long does Jake have NCE status for? Again, you'll see a poll appear on your screen. We'll give you just a brief amount of time to choose one of the options. And you have three options. Either A, he has NCE for 2 years, which expires June 2026. B, he'll have NCE for 1 year, which will expire June 2025. Or C, I'm not sure. We'll pause briefly and see what the results are that come in. And Chris, I'll pass it to you to look at the results in a minute. But again, we're asking you to to answer the poll on the screen and select your response. Don't forget to click submit. Give me maybe 5 more seconds. I think quite a few responses have come in. 3, 2, 1, and we'll go ahead and close the poll. And Chris, I'll let you share the results with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone, for the participation there. And it wasn't quite as one-sided as the previous poll. So we have 13% stating that it's good for 2 years in this situation until June 2026. We have 80% who answered B, 1 year until June 2025. And then another 7% at I'm not sure. And that's okay. That's why we're here.
Yes, and we appreciate your participation in the poll. For those that got B as the correct answer, congratulations. That is the correct answer, 1 year, because in this case, Jake does not get 2 years of NCE here, but in a situation like this, Jake would have received 1 year of NCE after the completion of each year, the 1 year of NCE after the first year of service, and 1 year of NCE after the second year. So kind of keeping with that theme, I'm going to segue into another common question because I know we, and especially Kaki, who we'll introduce in a few minutes, who works in the VMSU, sometimes get specific questions about NCE. So here's a common question. And this time we'll ask you to use the chat and simply answer yes or no. If you've served several part-time VISTA terms that add up to a full year of service, can you get NCE in this situation? Again, type in Y or N or yes or no, or you can even type in another language, although, well, I guess most languages, no is pretty common. So we should have a general idea of what your response is. So I'm seeing mostly no's. I think I saw a couple of yeses, but I'm going to guess it looks like 98.723% of people are saying yes. I mean, I'm sorry, are saying no. See, I can't even get yes or no correct. So thank you for participating. The answer here is no, and that is because in order to officially receive NCE, you have to serve a complete full-time VISTA assignment for 1 full year. It cannot be multiple terms added up to 1 year. So now I'm super excited to bring in our friend, our colleague, and an amazing person, Kaki Burke, for a little more insight. Kaki, since I mentioned it earlier in your work in the VISTA Member Support Unit, what would you say is a typical question that you get regarding NCE?
Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaki, and as mentioned, I am a member support specialist with the VISTA Member Support Unit, or VMSU. At the VMSU, the most common question we receive regarding NCE is about extensions. Members and alumni often want to know if there is a way that the NCE status can last beyond its 1 year timeframe. As mentioned, NCE status lasts for 1 year, and we at VISTA have no ability to extend NCE status. However, it can be extended by the hiring agency for an additional 2 years for a total of 3 years from the last day of your VISTA service.
Thank you so much, Kaki. I'm really glad you brought up that point because I think if it's a common question the VMSU gets, we should probably provide a little bit more detail around this to make sure everyone understands extension. So segueing from what Kaki said initially, extensions to your 1 year status are allowed for 3 reasons. One reason is you enter the military. Another reason could be that you become a full-time student at a recognized institution of higher learning. Or the third reason is that you engage in another activity that the hiring agency deems warrants an extension. This last bullet probably seems a little bit vague, but that can actually be a really good thing as it can really add some flexibility for potential extensions. So if you've ever viewed a position on USAJobs.gov, you've probably noticed that there are a lot of responsibilities and qualifications listed for each position description. So here's another scenario. If after your year of service, you go on to intern at a nonprofit organization, maybe you decide to volunteer, or perhaps you take employment at an organization that develops and improves your skills, knowledge, and/or experience in one or two of those areas. The hiring agency may decide to deem what you did as an engaging in an activity that made you an even stronger job candidate, and that could potentially warrant an extension. But again, as Kaki and Chris both said, we want to stress and make sure to note that the extension is entirely up to the hiring manager or agency to allow for the extension. We at AmeriCorps and in the VISTA program cannot extend it, nor can we decide if an extension would work. It's all up to the hiring manager.
Thanks, Eric. And I just want to say, I see some really good questions coming up in the chat. Please try to type those in the Q&A. We will try to get to everyone's question, or again, if we can't, we will follow up afterwards. So right now we're going to look at how you can go about finding federal positions and using your NCE status, which does tie into a few of the questions that came in. Now, there are 3 key steps to use your NCE status. So first up, once your term of service is complete and your 365 days are over, you'll then download your verification of service letter from your My AmeriCorps account. This is a document you will need to include in your federal application to advocate for your NCE status, and it explains the code that or legislation that provides that status. Secondly, you'll have to find open positions. So as we mentioned before, there are sometimes positions that especially request candidates with NCE. The best place to find these is on USAJobs.gov, but also remember to check out the Employers of National Service. That's on AmeriCorps.gov. There's a long list of employers of national service who may have some positions listed there. That all those positions aren't federal, just to note, but some are. And then there's also the RPCV career link, or Return Peace Corps Volunteer career link, a really good link. That's in the handout today, or actually links to both of these are in today's handout. So you could find a position maybe that isn't available or listed on USAJobs on these boards, which is a huge advantage where the federal hiring managers are specifically targeting those with NCE status. So definitely check out those two. That RPCV career link is really great on this. And then, of course, other times the positions could be posted on both. Oftentimes they are posted on both USAJobs and any of these external sources. Finally, you'll need to advocate for your NCE status during the hiring process by putting language in your resume, maybe putting it in your cover letter if you're using a cover letter, or your LinkedIn profile if you're using LinkedIn. Just put something in there that states that you have non-competitive eligibility and highlight it. Likewise, if you get to the interview stage, or you're at maybe you're at a career fair in person or virtual, meeting with potential federal employers, let them know you have NCE, point it out. So let's take a closer look at each of these 3 steps, starting with the first item, your verification of service letter. So once you've successfully completed your service term, you can obtain the VISTA verification letter from your My AmeriCorps account. So once you log in, you'll find the verification of service letter under the My Service Letter tab. It's the same area. You can log in right now to your My AmeriCorps account, and you can view your currently serving letters right now. If you go to the same section to My Service Letter, there will be some service letters listed there. But after you complete your service, it will be slightly different. It will update to your verification of service letter. This is a very important document because it proves your NCE status. It contains the language that explains NCE to the human resource specialist. And it displays, of course, your dates of service, which in turn will reflect the time frame that you can use NCE. So if you have any difficulties downloading this letter from your My AmeriCorps account, you can always contact the VISTA member support unit by either calling the National Service Hotline and opting for the VMSU, or by emailing vmsu@americorps.gov. Next up, let's talk a bit more about searching for positions on USAJobs. So it's never too soon to start researching and networking. Knowing what agencies are out there and maybe what hiring managers may be looking for, all that will allow you to think about how your current experience translates to that potential position. Hiring for federal positions can be a very lengthy process of sometimes months, oftentimes months actually, plural. It's generally recommended that you begin the application process. If you're wanting to start right after your service ends, we recommend that you begin the application process about 3 months before your service year ends, right around there. You should inform potential employers the date your NCE will start, and you can show your current service letter that reflects what your end date will be, and then note that you will have NCE status effective the day after your service ends. So you can let the hiring manager, for example, know that you will have NCE as of your last day of service. But keep in mind that if you, for any reason, you exit service early and don't complete the 365 days, you won't receive that NCE benefit or status. So an example here, like let's say if you're ending soon, you're ending service on June 1st, 2024. If that's the case, you could show your current service letter right now that reflects your service dates and that you're serving as a VISTA member. And then you can mention that effective June 2nd, you will have NCE status. And of course, that assumes that you will complete your service on June 1st and not end early. So let's actually look into this a bit more. I'm actually going to, give me 1 second, I'm gonna screen share here and just going to take a brief look at the USAJobs website. Second. Okay, bring this up. Okay, so here's USAJobs. We're not going to spend a ton of time here, but did want to just do a quick screen share to point out a few important features. Maybe to those of you who are less familiar with the site, or maybe haven't really looked around or searched around on it before. So first thing I want to show, and many of you mentioned this in the chat. So this is USAJobs. This is the home page. Just scrolling down right here, where you see what jobs can you apply for, and it lists a few, like for veterans or for students and recent grads. You click on Learn about all hiring paths. This is what Eric was referencing earlier about the VISTA hiring path. So down here, this purple icon down here, you can see it's Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA. There's a hiring path already there for you as a VISTA alum. So I'll just click on that and you get here. This will take you to an information page that gives you more details about applying for positions through this hiring path and includes some information on NCE. This page would also be very helpful to show if you encounter any hiring managers who may be unfamiliar with VISTA or NCE. You could just bring them right here. Hey, right here, homepage of USAJobs.gov. There's a hiring path right here that explains everything. And then at the bottom, it mentions including your certification of volunteer service right here. So for VISTA and VISTA alums, that would be your VISTA service letter that we just talked about, that you'll have access to in your My AmeriCorps account. So you would be able to download that from your My AmeriCorps account, upload it here to your USAJobs profile to include with your applications. We can actually look at that in just a second. So going back, okay, so this is information on the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA learning path, but just kind of going back to the home page. Also want to point out up here in the top, you see where events are up here. We definitely recommend just checking this out every once in a while. Sometimes there's some good virtual and in-person career fairs. Sometimes it's from specific agencies or departments. Sometimes it's, you know, a bunch of agencies all in once looking for hires and providing information. So just wanted to point out that events section as well. But also, you know, just to show you, if you haven't been to the site, so you see up here the basic search functions. You can search by keyword or location. So if we did an example here, I'm a VISTA. I'm serving in Denver, Colorado. I say that because I saw Anna there. Hey, Anna, a recent IST. So, okay. I want to see what jobs are here available in Denver, Colorado. You see, I just did a search there. 1,472 jobs show up. First off, wow. And so that could be jobs in the area. It could include remote jobs as well. But what we wanted to show is kind of, you see on this right-hand side are the filters, several filters. We can look at a couple of them, but what we really wanted to highlight is what we just looked at, the hiring path. So if you look at the hiring path filter, you see that purple icon, Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA. You can see right in parentheses, it shows how many will show up, 133. So we'll filter that, and that drops it down, you know, to like 10% of what it was, which is good and bad. It's good that it filters it down, but you know, maybe you wanted to sit through 1,400. That's fine. That's fine too. But just wanted to show you, you know, the way to filter this down. So we have Denver, Colorado. We have the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA Learning Path. We see 133 jobs that are specifically looking for this purple icon. They're aware of NCE status and they're looking out for members. This is from all agencies and departments. You could filter it more if you wanted to look at specific departments. But even here, you can come here, toggle this down, and it actually shows in parentheses how many positions are available from each department or agency as you scroll down. So if you had one in mind, you could definitely filter by that alone. If my VISTA service, you know, if I'm looking specifically for something in data or data analysis, I can add that. So as a keyword, that drops it down another 100, down to 33 jobs available that include data analysis. That's a keyword, so it could be in the job title, could be in the position description, but just an example of, you know, one of your VISTA functions, you could do it by grant writing or grants or, you know, project development. I think saw a couple people mention that at the beginning, and just to narrow down your search. But I wanted to mention that that's a good way to filter. Y'all know how to filter. We don't have to go through all of them, but I also want to note that you don't have to use the filter. So, you know, you saw all of those that we could use on the right-hand side, but those with that purple icon, the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, this purple icon, that designation, those positions are generally more knowledgeable about the benefit and have an easier time hiring you. So if you love a position, but you really want to apply, but you don't see this purple icon, that's okay. You can absolutely still apply for that. You may need to advocate for yourself and ask them to take your status into consideration. It may take, you know, highlighting it on your resume and pointing it out, but absolutely you can. Okay, so wanted to point that out. So once you have the position, you want to apply, you have to create a profile on here on USAJobs if you have not done so already. You can see I'm logged in, Christopher up here. So you just log in, make a profile, upload your documents. You can see my documents here. You can see resumes. Did want to point this out on the resumes because I come over here to mine. You see I have two, because one's kind of like my standard one. There's also a federal resume federal resume, which, so my standard one is the one, you know, it's 1 or 2 pages, kind of really narrow. The federal resume dives deep into the details. If you have not done one, I would recommend you do it because, well, many positions on this website prefer the federal resume. And B, it really gets you to look at your past, your history, everything. It really dives into all the details that could be applicable to potential positions. So if you scroll down, you see here this upload or build resume. So you can upload yours, or it walks you through how to build a federal resume as well. So probably a good idea to have both. And then just in this other section is just the other documents. You know, I have a couple transcripts here. Cover letter would be here. And this is, wanted to point this out because this is my Peace Corps description of service. This is, as VISTA alumni, you know, you would have your VISTA verification of service letter, the one that you get in your My AmeriCorps account. You would come here to upload that here to include with your documents. So once you do that, apply to a position, upload these documents, and you go right ahead with that. So wanted to point that out. Let's bring it back to the presentation and a couple more items to look over. Second. There we go. Awesome. Okay. So thanks for bearing with me there. So now we want to look at the third part here, advocating for your NCE status during the hiring process. It's a common question as well, and I will pass it to Eric for that part.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, it is absolutely important to advocate. So let's talk about that. As you may or may not know, hiring a candidate with NCE status is very desirable for federal hiring managers. However, they have to know that you're eligible. When a hiring manager reviews your application, you want to make absolutely sure that they are aware of your NCE status. Don't just assume that they know. So again, we're delighted to have Kaki Burke with us, who's going to share a little bit more detail about her specific experience with using and marketing her NCE status. Kaki, thanks for joining us again.
Yes, hi everyone. So as Eric and Chris mentioned, I began working with AmeriCorps in May of 2021. I was able to begin my career with the federal government due to my NCE status, which I received as a result of my experience in the Peace Corps in 2020. As we all know, the pandemic occurred in 2020, which unfortunately cut my Peace Corps experience short. I was in Ecuador, where the pictures you are seeing on screen were taken, and was suddenly evacuated in March. Fortunately, my cohort was given the benefits of evacuated Peace Corps volunteers, including non-competitive eligibility status. My description of service Peace Corps service letter acted as proof of my NCE status, just as your VISTA service letter will when you complete your VISTA service term. My NCE status had almost reached the 1-year limit at the time I applied for the job, though potentially I could have advocated for an extension given the circumstances of the pandemic at the time. Again, it would have been up to the hiring agency to grant me an extension. As we, based on your individual circumstances, I did find the job posting through the Return Peace Corps Volunteer Job Board. In this instance, the instructions were to attach my Peace Corps description of service letter in an email along with my other application materials. I stated in my email that I had NCE status and that the letter was attached. The application process will vary based on the position and the agency, as many of the jobs accepting NCE status will use USAJobs as the form for applying, as Chris was just showing us. Non-competitive eligibility is one of the great benefits offered by the VISTA program, so I encourage all of you to take advantage of this benefit if you are interested.
Kaki, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I know there's probably a lot more there, but even just the brief part you shared was very, very powerful. And I really love how you were so proactive in your approach to really make sure that the federal hiring agency knew about your NCE, as you said, because you attached your service letter in an email to them. So to that point, adding on to the point that Kaki made about the email, in addition to sharing information with your potential hiring agency, one important place to market your NCE status is directly in your resume. You just heard Chris talk about a regular resume as well as a federal resume, that you definitely want to highlight it there. And as you can see on the screen, this VISTA listed their dates of service along with the date that their NCE expires. It's very simple, effective, and it puts this information front and center. No need to use the blue font or anything, but we highlighted the NCE text in blue simply so that it stands out on the slide. But you may decide to italicize it if you prefer. Another great place that you definitely should mention your NCE status is your cover letter. And because of their format, you're able to give a little bit more detail about NCE in your cover letter than you are able to do so just in your resume. So in this example, the VISTA member states that they have NCE, the effective dates of their NCE status, and they point the recipient to resources where they can learn more about NCE. Again, we want to point out that you should not assume that all federal hiring managers are familiar with NCE status. There may be times when you will have to explain this benefit to them, so it's vital that you know where to go for more information about it. And as a final touch, this VISTA member also enclosed their verification of service letter that Chris was talking about that will be available when you are done with service. So if you are applying for jobs during your final months of service, as Chris recommended, you won't have this official letter. You will have your currently serving letter, but you certainly could explain in your cover letter that you are enclosing your currently serving letter that you can find in your My AmeriCorps account, and that you will soon be eligible for NCE once you complete your 365 days of service. And we'll share a link in the chat to a page that includes more tips for cover letters in general. Now, in addition to marketing your NCE status in your resume and in a cover letter, there might be a few other instances where you need to advocate for yourself. And here are two possible situations. The first question is, but what if a hiring manager is not familiar with NCE status, or they don't really know what it is? If this were to happen, you can share a link to the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA hiring path on USAJobs.gov, because this page provides an official overview of NCE status. Also, your service letter includes language and the executive order information that pertains to NCE status. Another question that sometimes comes up is, what if you think you're eligible for an extension? Well, as Kaki mentioned earlier, and as we stated, you may be eligible to extend your NCE status for up to 3 years in a few circumstances, and I'll just quickly remind you what they are. If you're in the military, if you're studying at an institution of higher learning, or if you are involved in an activity which the agency believes should warrant an extension. And as a reminder, in each case, it is the hiring agency, not AmeriCorps, not the VISTA program, that enables extensions. So you'll need to make sure that you provide your case to the hiring manager to advocate for an extension. When your VISTA service is over, in addition to celebrating and cheering, woohoo, because it'll be an amazing accomplishment, here are some next steps that will allow you to take full advantage of your NCE benefit. First, make sure that you know the ins and outs of this hiring pathway and how you can take advantage of it. In addition to this webinar, there are other resources available on USAJobs.gov and AmeriCorps.gov. So you should be armed with the knowledge to advocate for yourself and answer any questions that come your way. Next, as Chris showed you on the USAJobs.gov website, search for federal positions, which you can do anytime, right now or closer to your end of service, just to see what's out there. And it's a great option, though eventually another great way to learn about federal positions and meet hiring managers is to network. You'll want to find federal hiring events in your area or virtual events, reach out to federal employees in your town, even connect with other VISTA members, and check out the VISTA and Peace Corps job board. On more than one occasion, VISTAs have been offered jobs through word of mouth and the known quality of VISTA members and the work you do. And last, but certainly not least, make sure to let the world know that you have earned NCE status. You worked hard during your year of service. You'll be completing a year of service. So don't be bashful when it comes to touting the results of that effort. In addition to all that you've accomplished on your projects, put your NCE status on your resume, LinkedIn profile, and in your cover letters. The AmeriCorps alumni page and previous webinars on the VISTA campus offer some amazing sample language and tips for putting together a resume and refining bullets on the resume. All the resources that we've mentioned so far are available on the handout that we'll share in the chat, and it'll also be posted on the VISTA campus along with a recording of today's presentation in just a couple of days. So as we get close to the end, we're going to wrap up with a final review question related to today's topic. You'll see a poll appear on your screen, and we're going to ask you to take a minute to select the 3 correct answers. There are only 3 correct answers. And you'll see the statement says, federal agencies may extend the eligibility period for NCE for up to 3 years if, after your completed service, you are, and then you select 3 of the 5 possible choices. So we'll give you about a minute or so to do that, and then we'll look at the results. Again, make sure that after you select your 3 responses that you click submit. And I keep saying 3 because we want to make sure that you know there are only 3 correct answers, and hopefully you get them correct. Okay. Well, I know you're sad for us to stop the music because I would love to keep playing it, but we do have a few more slides to get through. So we'll give you about 5 or so more seconds to finish up your responses. Again, 3 responses, click submit. 3, 2, 1, time's up. So thank you for selecting your answers and putting information in the poll. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the correct answers. So based on this question, the correct answers are B, C, and E. Studying at a recognized institution of higher learning, involved in another activity which in the agency's view warrants an extension, or in the military service. So thank you very much for your participation in that review question. As a final reminder, NCE status lasts for 1 year, and that starts the first day after you complete your year of service. And it may be able to be extended for up to 3 years if after your completed service, you are in the military, studying at a recognized institution of higher learning, or involved in another activity which in the agency's view warrants an extension. So great work. Before we get to potential questions that you may have, we're going to shift gears now and ask you to fill out a brief survey and get your feedback on today's webinar. Your input is always valuable. Chris and our team look at your feedback in detail because we want to improve this webinar as well as future webinars. So please take just 3 to 5 minutes, either now or soon after the webinar is over, to provide us your feedback. The survey may already be open in your browser window, but we'll also share a link in the chat where you can click on it and access it directly. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you to see if we have any questions coming in.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Kaki. Yeah, a bunch of questions in the queue, and some of them are repetitive, so we'll try to do a quick round on some of these, and I'll try to answer a few right here. And Eric and Kaki, please jump in if I'm missing any information. Sierra asks, when looking at jobs, they all indicate a year followed by a GS number. How do we know what grade we are to know if we are qualified to apply? So you can apply to any, but you know, depends on your experience and level as to whether they will afford you, you know, as the minimum qualified for that position to pass you on. So really you just need to look at the description there, see if the description and requirements that they list match what your resume has. And if so, I would definitely apply to it. If not, I'd still apply to it, but you know, you may not if it's a really high GS number. Will slides be shared? Yes, we will recording this. We'll share the slides, or recording and handouts tomorrow, and we'll email you once that is posted to the VISTA campus. Let's see. I'm still looking through. Eric, jump in if you have one in mind. Is there a workshop training session offered on how to build a federal resume? So yes, USAJobs.gov does have some. I don't know if they have recorded ones. I think so, because that is a good question. But I do know that they advertise upcoming events on building a federal resume. So definitely would check out the events page on USA Jobs. Someone asked, how do you make your resume searchable on USA Jobs? I forgot to show that, and I apologize, but where I was on the screen share when I showed you my two resumes, my normal resume and the federal resume that I have, there's just a little checkbox right underneath that says make searchable. That way recruiters can search for your resume.
There was also a great question, Chris, that came in around, is there a particular incentive for agencies to recognize our NCE status? I love that question. The answer is absolutely. Very briefly, the reason why federal agencies like AmeriCorps, when I got my job, Khaki got her job, a lot of us used NCE. It's a huge benefit to federal agencies because, one, they can hire someone so much quicker. As Chris mentioned earlier, they don't have to go through the full application process, so it could be extremely quick. The other reason is sometimes agencies want to know people have done national service. There's a certain criteria that people expect from someone who served in national service. So with someone with NCE, they already know they probably have certain values and qualifications for the job. So it's definitely a great benefit for them.
Thanks, Eric. Let's see. If Maria asks us, if someone moves to another state after they complete the year of service, can they apply to a federal job in the state they moved to? Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's not tied to the state where you're serving. You can apply to any of the federal positions. Absolutely, Maria. There were a couple questions here about if NCE status helps in applying to FBI and CIA positions. I believe all the national security agencies are part of the accepted service, which Eric was talking about a bit earlier. So I don't think they would honor NCE, but they do highly value VISTA alumni, Peace Corps alumni, those in national service. So it would still be, if you're interested in those positions, I would still recommend applying there. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying. Please jump in, Eric. They're coming in fast. Student is full-time. Is the university or hiring agency of a job said student is applying for the one that extends the eligibility? It's up to the hiring agency on extension. So just note that your NCE status and note that you are employed or studying full-time at either in your cover letter, in your interview. You can mention in the email like Khaki mentioned. That way that they'll know that the extension will be sufficient. Joseph, sorry. Joseph says, I haven't had my questions answered. I'm sorry, Joseph. I'll try to find it. I didn't see a question here, but duly noted. We're trying to get through as many as we can. Someone asked how to find, Ebony's asking, can you find administrative openings for AmeriCorps? So yeah, when we were doing the screen share and showed USA Jobs, and you saw on the right side the filters, you can absolutely just filter by agency, and you can filter for AmeriCorps. It should list AmeriCorps, but we also have a mouthful of an official name that's in our legislation. It's the Corporation for National and Community Service. So it might be listed as that, Corporation for National and Community Service. But yeah, you can definitely search individually for those positions as well. Some questions about, does VISTA provide help on building a federal resume? So we talked about the events page and how it's on USAJobs, how they have some webinars that can help with building the federal resume. We don't have a specific one on that, but we do have a couple of items in the Life After VISTA learning path on the VISTA campus on how to highlight VISTA in your resumes. It doesn't actually go through the process of creating a federal resume, but it gives tips on, bullet points on how to explain your VISTA service, how to explain, differentiate between VISTA and your project, and things like that. There's also another webinar on interviewing as well. So definitely recommend checking out the Life After VISTA learning path. Look, I know we're running out of time, and hey, if you have a question in the queue, we're going to continue to answer these and try to get to them all if we can even. So I would recommend hanging on. If you have to jump off, you have another meeting, that's okay. We can follow up afterwards as well. Please feel free to email us at vistatraining@americorps.gov or vmsu@americorps.gov. But we will continue answering as many as we can. Do want to be respectful of your time and just kind of want to continue just for a second. Again, this question came up a few times. We are recording this. We will post this to the campus tomorrow and email you once it is, along with the materials. So you can just log in, find the learning path, clicking on catalog at the top. Again, catalog at the top, and then you could search for member benefits. That's where this particular webinar recording will be located. But actually, as you see on the screen on the right-hand side, Life After VISTA, that's what I was just talking about, where you can find a recorded webinar and handouts and resources on how to ace your interview, as well as resume, helpful tips on resumes and Life After VISTA. Okay, but yeah, this particular one will be under member benefits because NCE is a benefit. And if it's your first time accessing the learning path, you just have to enroll and join it. Couple quick steps, and once you've joined the learning path, you can browse through all of the available recorded webinars at your leisure. And did want to plug our next webinar in June. We'll have one titled Understanding Nonprofits in the United States. So we will meet again next month on Wednesday, June 26th. And the webinar will be at the exact same time, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can register for it now if you'd like. We'll drop a link in the chat to register. But you can also access it at the campus calendar. So if you just log into the VISTA campus, click on calendar at the top, a blue or green dot will indicate an event for that day. So you can click on June 26th. You'll see the description and the link to register, and we certainly hope to see you there. But thank you so much for your time, for your participation in the chat and poll questions, and for your interesting questions. If you have a pending question, we are going to try to answer all in the queue. So if you're able to, please hang on. If not, we hope to see you on next month's webinar. We know NCE is a popular topic, and appreciate all your time today. And also just thank you for serving your communities. Thank you for serving as an AmeriCorps VISTA member. We wish you all the success in the world this year. Big thanks to Eric and Kaki as well for sharing your insights, and we'll conclude our webinar. So feel free to drop off if you don't have a pending question, but thanks everyone.